Hello everyone. Today we are going to be talking about future value, what it is, and how the formula works. It's actually quite a straightforward concept. Future value is simply how much an investment today will be worth in the future over a certain amount of time at a specific rate of return. This is an important tool that helps investors project how much their investments will be worth in the future. Now let's take a look at the equation. PV times 1 plus R to the power of N. PV, this is the present value of the money that you have right now. Let's say you have $100 sitting in the bank. The PV, or present value, of that money is $100. R is the expected rate of return for the investment. This could be anything from the expected return on a stock, an ETF, or even just interest from your money sitting in the bank. And finally, we have N, which is the number of compounding periods the money will be invested. The most commonly used value for N would be the number of years, but you can use any period of time for N. It could be months, weeks, even days. Let's look at an example to illustrate just how this works. If you wanted to calculate the compounding return on $100 that is growing at 10% per year for 3 years, you have two options. The first would be to take 100 times 1 plus 10%, which will give us $110. You would then take that $110 and multiply that by the same number, 1 plus 10%, which will give us $121. If we do that one more time, we'll take $121 times 1 plus 10%, which gives us in the end $133.10. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, well, why can't I just add up the percentages of each year and use that? We return 10% 3 times, so what if you just took 100 times 1 plus 30%? Well, this will only give us $130 instead of $133, and that's because it doesn't take into account the effect of compounding interest. As you can see, with simple interest, the payment is exactly the same year over year based on your initial investment or principal. Whereas with compound interest, we add the payments each year back into the principal, leading to higher interest payments year over year. Now, this is why the equation for future value is so incredibly useful, because including the exponent for N for the number of compounding periods allows us to get exactly the same result as calculating each year individually. So if we were to take 100 times 1 plus 10% to the power of 3, with 3 being the number of compounding periods, in this case years, we get the exact same result of $133.10. This is what makes calculating future value much easier, especially for long-term investments. Let's say that we have $5,000 invested in a stock market fund with an expected return of 10% a year for the next 30 years. You would simply take $5,000, which is the present value, times 1 plus 10%, or the rate of return, or expected rate of return, and then raise that to the power of 30. 30 being the number of years, or in this case, the number of compounding periods. If we equals that out, we get $87,247. Now that you have an idea of how the formula works, let's take a look at some real-world examples to help reinforce our understanding. A 20-year-old saves $30 a week in a checking account for the next 10 years to start saving for retirement. After 10 years, they have saved up $15,600 and decide to invest that money in a stock market fund with an expected return of 10% a year. How much will this investment be worth in 35 years when they retire? So all we have to do is take $15,600, which is the present value of the money that they've saved, times that by 1 plus 10% to the power of 35. And this gives us $438,398. Question 2. A retiree has $2 million invested, and their money is returning 6% per year. How much money will their investment be worth 1 year from now? Very simple. All we do, take the $2 million times 1 plus 6% to the power of 1. This gives us $2,120,000. Question 3. The parents of a newborn decide to set aside $5,000 in an education fund to help pay for their college expenses. It's projected to grow at 9% per year. How much money will the fund be worth in 18 years? We take $5,000 times 1 plus 9% to the power of 18. This gives us $23,585. Now let's assume that the fund was meant for the child's retirement instead of college. How much would the money be worth in 65 years? Again, we would take the $5,000 times 1 plus 9%, but instead of 18, we're going to plug in 65 for the number of compounding periods. This gives us $1,354,229. For the next question, let's take a look at monthly compounding. For example, let's say someone invests $1,000 in an ETF, returning 6% per year, with monthly compounding. How much will their investment be worth in 2 years? If you are using more frequent compounding periods than yearly, you need to make sure that you adjust both the rate of return and the number of periods to reflect this. In this example, the annual return is 6%, so 6% per year. What we're going to have to do is divide that by 12 months, which gives us 0.5% per month of return. Then you take the number of years, in this case 2, and multiply that by 12 to get 24 months, because there are 24 months over a 2-year period. Now we can plug those values into the formula. So we have $1,000 times 1 plus 0.5% to the power of 24. And this gives us $1,127. Now for this final question, I will be challenging everyone watching this video to go ahead and try to solve it yourself. Let me know down in the comments what answers you get. Let's say that you have $50,000 to invest, and you decide to put half of the money in a stock index fund with an expected return of 9% per year, and the other half in a low-risk fund growing at only 3.5% per year. In 30 years, how much will each investment be worth? Again, let me know down in the comments what answers you get. And that concludes my brief introduction to future value. If you learned something, have any other questions, or if you notice any mistakes in my calculations or explanations, let me know down in the comments. And remember to always seek professional advice before making any investment decisions. I am not a financial advisor, and my videos are for educational and entertainment purposes only. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time.